topic is the democratization of the society and social justice. Democratization, and first of all, I am going to some definitions and how the democratization, we are thinking about the democratization. The democratization, we have an understanding what democracy means. For one needs to have an idea of the nature of the phenomena one wants to explain. In its internal meaning, government by the people. This is the first question: is the government by the people? People's power. Democratization in the powers by which this happens. People's power is institutionalized through civic movements that entitle people to govern their lives, allowing them to follow their personal preferences in governing their private lives and to make their political preferences count in governing public life. Now, question is the state, in question of the democratic state. In the history of states, the institutionalizations of people power has been an unlikely achieved. If we share democratic states, there must be a process towards formation of democratic states through democratization of the institutions of the state. Democratization can be understood in three different ways. For one, it is the introduction of democracy in a non-democratic regime. Next, democratization can be understood as the deepening of the democratic qualities of given democracies. Finally, democratization involves the questions of the survival of democracy. That is the emergence, the deepening, and the survival of democracy are strictly distinct aspects of the democratization. But the merge in the questions of sustainable democratization, that is the emergence of democracies that develop and endure. Democratization is sustainable to the extent to which it advances in response to pressures from within the society. In every state and society, there are driving forces for democratization. So we have to understand why and where democracy first emerged. So we have must a closer look at the origin of inception, that is mean the nascent democracy, to pre-industrialized times, and the factor giving rise it without exception. All nascent democracies are found in agrarian economic system as well as the freeholder system. The freeholder type society organize their defense also by creating their own militia. Freeholder system not only gave rise to nascent democracy, but also to pre-industrial capitalism. And nascent democracy is hardly the result of an ingenious act of social engineering at one point in history to create freeholdership, capitalism, and democracy. Capitalism vested bargaining power in the wider society. In the liberal revolution and the liberation war since 17th century, the middle class used the bargaining power against monarchs to establish the principle no taxation without representation. This is the birth of nascent democracy. Just a minute, please. Nascent democracy. Capitalism preceded it. Democracy and democratization for empowering human condition in a society. It includes empowering cultural condition that motivate people to struggle for democracy and empowering economic conditions that make people capable to do so. As an institutional means to empower people, democracy is inherently linked to empowering economic and cultural conditions. Democracy empowers people in allowing them to practice democratic freedom. Human empowerment as a whole, there is a syndrome of empowering economic, cultural, and institutional conditions. Emancipation inspired mass action, and only emancipation inspired mass action have a democratizing effect, both in making democratic gains where the initial democracy level is low, and in prevailing democratic losses where the initial democracy level is high. The kind of comment supportive and allusion on communal forces and communal orientation emphasized in most of the political culture. Literature does tend to place power elite in stable cultural context where they face little resistance. These orientations do not motivate people to put pressure on elites to establish, retain, or deepen democratic freedom. Emancipation orientation, by contrast, to serve this purpose. These beliefs are an important mass orientation for democracy, operating in favor of its emergence, survival, and deepening. That is the basic question of democratization, condition of the democratization, and the situations of the society. Now I can address the development of democratizations in Indian subcontinent. The development of pre-industrialization of Indian subcontinent society, that is pre-capitalizing and pre-capitalistic production system in agrarian class. The economic relation with agrarian production system take a form of particular juridical and practical political relation, which called Varna and caste class social system in India, related with the divisions of labor, with the mode of production confined with juridical social order, with barred by non-mobility, confined with particular production system, activities, and produces of agrarian economic relation, which is also endemic and endogamic. That is the called Varna and caste system, which is the mode of production of the Asian. It is called the Asian mode of production. This mode of production is not simply a pre-industrialization technology, but a social organization of production and economic activities, and a mode of exploitation also. Its relation with social political power structure, which was existed and to some extent in present context in Indian society, is also existed in the base and superstructure both. Accordingly, it is a peculiar mode of production. Karl Marx called it the Asian mode of production. This mode of production is an extreme opposition of capitalistic mode of production and a devolutionary process in perspective of industrialization and capitalist economics. Production system, produce, and property, including land, were controlled by the political power, that is feudal monarch state. The entry of East India Company in India, an invasion of British imperialist forces in India, and colonizations of Indian subcontinent, economic and political power shifted. Trade, commerce, and industrialization gradually relaxed the juridical social power for the interest of British colonial state, and emergence of a new comparator middle class and the old feudal lords demanded, with negotiating with the British imperialist force and called this colonial state to represent and sharing the limited power within the colonial state and the institutions of the colonial state. Though there is a long history of India in respect of its constitutions of present Indian state, almost from the Mughal era, that is the foundation of present territorial, judicial and administrative structure. But there was re-industrialization, feudal monarch state. Our subject matter is democratization of the society in the nascent democracy, in the capitalist industrialization era, when the East India Company entered in India in 18th century. We can consider it from the last quarter of 19th century. Particularly the year 1885, the formation of Indian National Congress, the political organization of landlord, comprador, middle classes, in the beginning of the industrialization and development of finance capital, market economy, it becomes urged to participate in the governance of colonial state and institutions of the state. The 1907, the British government in their Commonwealth Convention, that is called Colonial Conference, on that year, India was excluded. But in this year 1907, the Commonwealth Convention, the British at the same time, some other political forces coming in the front, demanding the representation and participation also. That is the communal forces. The Hindu Mahasabha and later on Muslim League, to some extent in question of dominion status, self-governance, these communal forces, Hindu Mahasabha, Muslim League, to some extent cooperated with the Congress in their ideals of Swaraj, with their communal aspirations. Within the Congress, there has also developed a strong left-wing element in the Congress, which is definitely socialist and which is stresses the necessity of winning social and economic freedom for the masses in opposition to Mr. Gandhi's policy, which has endeavored to secure the cooperation of landlord and peasant. capitalist and workmen, rich and poor, much more in harmony with Congress. In the Congress Nationalist Party, whose chief differences with the main body lies its opposite to the Communal Award 1932. In the other side, the depressed classes, most of them are in victim of the Varna and caste system and not the part of the freeholder of the property. They are in oppression and they are also confined with the Asiatic mode of production without having any mobility. The depressed classes, almost some 40 to 55 million strong, have their own separate interests and justice. Or non-Brahmin forces, particularly in Madras, Bombay, central provinces, is prepared for constructive work in the political sphere. In 1918, they also formed a new political force, revolt from Congress. They formed their own political party, Indian Liberal Federation, Justice Party. Because from the very basic point, that is the industrializations, finance capital, and grown up the market economy, the different forces, because in India, the force, they are differently classified. They are differently from the community, a class. They also urge for democratization through emancipation and participation in the state institutions. Finally, in 1935, British Parliament enacted the Government of India Act to form the government with limited power and limited franchise. And this, by the Government of India Act, almost 10 to 12 years, in different provinces, they have formed their government. Particularly in this government, due to the Communal Award of 1932, a large number of so-called scheduled castes, that is, who are the oppressed in caste strata, who are oppressed in the social strata, they also represented. A large number of minorities also represented. It is a very limited period, and it is experienced the social political forces, their conflicts and their cooperations and their possible alliances also. And we come in 1947, that is the independent Indian state after having partition. Now question is the Indian Constitution. This constitution prepared a prolonged discussion through Constitution Assembly. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was the chairman of the drafting committee of the Constitution. This Constitution is necessary for a Indian's independent state. For making a constitution, consulted the Constituent Assembly. They have a lofty idea, and through the Constitution's maker have a dream for a social revolution or reforms and modernizing the Indian state. They have a lofty vision, and it is also an agreed document of the different social and political forces. That is the Indian Constitution. The basic feature of the Indian Constitution, what Constitution maker thought, first, the very institution of parliamentary government would have, it was believed, a profound effect on the Indian social structure by replacing traditional with modern technique and goal. Secondly, particular part of the Constitution were to play and special role in beginning about a social revolution in India. Prominent here were the fundamental rights and directive principles and the provision for universal adult suffrage. The fundamental rights have provided a rallying point for the increase of civil liberties of the common man. The civil liberties is the basic ingredients of democratization. The Indian Constitution is first and foremost a social document. The majority of its provisions are either directly aimed at furthering the goals of the social transformation and establish the condition to achieve the goal. The fundamental rights and directive principles is summing up. It is quite evident that the fundamental rights and the directive principles were designed by the members of the Assembly to be the chief instruments in bringing about the great reforms of the society. It will help to Indian society to closer to the Constitution goal of social, economic, and political justice. The framing of the judicial provisions of the Constitution and idealism only by the shown towards the fundamental rights. Indeed, the judiciary was seen as an extension of the rights, or it was the force that would give the right force. The judiciary was to be an arm of social changes, upholding the equality that Indian had longed for during colonial days, but had not gained. Not simply because the regime was colonial, force, repressive, but largely because the British had feared that social change would endanger their rule. The Constituent Assembly, at the time of framing the judicial provision, keeping in view that the independence of judiciary and two closely related issues, the powers of the Supreme Court and judicial review. The judicial review is an essential power of the courts of a free India, an India with a federal constitution. The foundation of judicial provision and judicial review power of Supreme Court is basically uphold the constitution and special responsibility to safeguard the fundamental rights as well. If we have a look again, the preamble of the Constitution, it is our agreed social document towards democratization of the society and social justice. I am reading here in the preamble. With the people of India having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign socialist, secular, democratic republic, and to secure to all the citizens justice, social, economic, and political liberty of thoughts, expression, belief, faith, and worship, equality of status, and opportunity among them all, fraternity assuring the dignity of the individual. Now we have to take an account of constitutional journey of 7 years, because 7 years have already been over. And what extent the democratization of the society achieved and justice distributed as social, economic, and political. Whether parliamentary system of democracy and fundamental rights and directive principle, Indian judicial system, judicial review system, and distributive justice, social, economic, and political, transform the basic traditional structure of the society towards modernization with democratization to transform the India and Indian society towards socialistic, democratic, secular state with based on justice, equality, liberty, fraternity, whether judiciary uphold the constitution with enforcing the judicial review time to time of the driving force of the society, acted parliamentary democracy, and judiciary, which is the practical, economic, class force for control the basic structure to superstructure of the society. Now that is the question. What we achieve? Because from the very beginning, our statesmen under the leadership of Jawaharlal Nehru, a great visionary, and our constitution maker Ambedkar, they are the great visionary. They tried to become the social transformation, the transformation of the state with individuals' liberty, with human rights, civil liberties, with assuring the workers' life through the enactment of labor laws, and time to time rendering the social justice also. Though in the constitutional provision, there is a provision from Article 330 to 330 to 342, empowerment of some classes who are deprived thousands of years of the social system. They are not participating in the institution. They adopted all the ideas, all the directive force by which the people become empowered and democratizing. We have to review, since the nascent democracy in British colonial state and the conflicts of the different economic and political forces, which is not still resolved, which is towards modernity, democratization. Rather, the political economy played the commanding role to sustain the old order, to sustain the pre-nascent democracy in social structure. And the achievement of democratization is not sustainable when the power elite or state operator resist and retreat the journey of social transformation through this constitution. And what is the role of the social and the judiciary? From the very beginning, they have, in 1951, communal representation case, 1954, Religious Endowment Act, 1962, excommunication case, and thereafter historical judgment in Indra Sahani Mandal Commission case. In every time, in question of interpretation of faith, in question of interpretation of Article 25, the religious faith, belief, they time to time considered the forces who are operating pre-industrialization period to repress a huge number of people with exploitation. Now question is, why the present situation of Indian state, their retreat from the preamble of the constitution in question of justice, justice to the poor, justice to the peasantry, justice to the worker. They are going to abolish the labor laws. Now they are adopting the policy of higher and higher policy. They are adopting the new Citizenship Amendment Act, National Registration of Citizenship. They want to exclude a large number of people who are the citizens of the country. So what is the behind of it? It is the behind of it is the political economy. Because the political economy, finance capital, they want the cheap labor. They want the bonded labor. They want labor will be cheap and policy of appointment of labor, hiring and firing. In question of social justice, they resisted the participations of the downtrodden, depressed people in the state institution. They restricted the Mandal Commission judgment. They brought the idea of familiar idea. When in Article 340 there is no provision of economic constitution, there is the provision of social and educational consideration, and imposing the restrictions of creamy layer, they are barring a huge number of people from the participation of the state. That is the situation is going on, and our emancipation, our democratization is now not sustainable. Our democratization is under threat. Our preamble is under threat. Our social justice is under threat. Our conceptuality of the poor, justice to the poor, is under threat. So that we are again reverting the democratization. That is the main theme, today's dialogue. We have to revisit, we have to think why the democratization is not sustained, why democracy is not sustainable in our state periphery. Friends, I am waiting for that question now. If any question from your end, you can ask me.
Thank you so much, sir. It was very elaborative, informative, and conceptually clear in the context of the theme you have been talking of. We have a few questions. There's one question that, as a citizen of the country, when you have adopted a constitution which is available and accessible to everyone, but then the use of the constitutional provisions are not available to the weaker sections and minorities in India. You are deprived of accessing the legal and judiciary because of the socio-economic backwardness. What kind of provisions they can utilize when they face these kind of legal crises?
I also omit the very important judgment. I want to say in this context, that is the judgment of demolition of Babri Masjid and Ram Janmabhoomi judgment. It is the first time in Indian judiciary. If you read the entire judgment, in the narrations, in the judgment, they have write down all the facts. But if you go the operative portion of the judgment, this judgment is absence of rationality. The judgment is absence of judicial conscience, absence of jurisprudence also. They delivered the judgment on faith. It is completely violates the Article 25 of the Constitution. When the Supreme Court is the guardian of the Constitution, and Supreme Court is liable to uphold the Constitution, and this is the utter violations, I think so. So that it is the departure in the name of faith. That is the collectiveness, faith, diversity, plurality. Everything is going to jeopardize further reason. The constitutionalism and judiciary, through their provision of judicial review, they are not met of the aspirations of oppressed groups, minorities, tribals, scheduled castes. Their dream that through Constitution, the Indian society would be a modernized, reforming, and will be scientific. At the time of Nehruji, he believed on science. in absence of science. It is very much frustrated to the vulnerable sections, is a huge number of people. So that now we can think the main thing is the parliamentary democracy, how the parliamentary democracy is controlled. In parliamentary democracy, it is our parliamentary, it is the constitutional maker, they thought that Indian parliament would be the representations of the different classes, different faiths, and they will exchange their views. They will build up a modern scientific states. Now that everything is going to frustrate it. So the people are now very much reluctant, very much dissatisfied about the parliamentary democracy. The basic thing is the emancipation of power, emancipation, democratizations of the peoples also. I think I am able to satisfy you in case to something else.
No, uh, no, it's interesting. There's one connecting
Yes, please.
problem that uh, any incident which happens
Yes,
here, any incident which happens in the country, and example during the period of COVID, if you take an example, then individual raising questions of their rights, their access to right.
Yes, yes.
You go to state or machinery of the state last, but you are trialed by
Yes.
the media first. Media has severe trial of any individual who raises questions on the violation of democratic rights. So how
Yes, yes.
does citizens get legally aware or legally empowered to handle those situations when media is trialing you very fast and you become a villain or anti-national?
There is the first question is the role of judiciary.
Yeah.
It is the very important role because the judiciary is such an institution. It is our constitutional maker. They thought the judiciary will become an independent, and the judiciary will right force to guide the state, but the state operator, the executives. Now executive is not checked. To check and balance power is the hand of judiciary. Judiciary is not playing the right role. And judiciary is not giving any directions properly. Judiciary is not intervening into this matter seriously, by which the social balance be maintained, that democracy be sustained. It is absolutely the responsibility of the judiciary. If judiciary be active, so that the media be controlled. Because when media, I think the ruling elites, the power broker of the ruling elites mean the political party, the ruling actor, they are doing for their own intention, for their satisfy their people, their groups, and also this they are for their capitals force also. So the question is the very important role here is the judiciary, because judiciary is too much reluctant to intervene into the keeping the balance, the essence of the preamble of the constitution, the moral of the constitution, which I call the constitutional morality. The uphold the constitutional morality. After 70 years, we are saying, if you go through the entire judgment, there is so many judgments, so many judgments. The Supreme Court protect the rights of the people, protect the rights of the faith, so many things. But in the last 5 years, the Supreme Court role is very much negative and very much frustrated before the large masses.
There has been severe negligence on the area of, like, the questions are that how the state has deliberately neglected the Adivasis, the Dalits, who are the large chunk of migrant laborers today, or the backward?
Only one thing, that is the economy is globalized, and all over India, all over world. Now is the competitions within the capital. Capital is throughout the world. Uh, uh, Capital now cross the barriers of the nations. That is called multinations. The capital's main target is the profit. They want raw materials. They want the cheap labor. So, in question of raw material, that is the minerals and so many things. In the minerals that is dumped in where the Adivasis are lived, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, different costly minerals. So, for the interest of capital, to destabilize, to remove the people who are living thereon, mainly Adivasis. This is a question of cattle. So that reason, they are torturing inhuman torture to displace us from their own land. That is the first. Second question is the cheap labor. They jeopardize all the labors, the protection of the labors. Now in present situation, what conditions in the Indian labors we never seen in our life. We never thought in our life. What is the miserable condition there? They are dying every moment. They have a basic right and basic human rights also. It is the question of the capital, because capital, the concept of the welfare state, that is unfaced. We are passing a stage of chronic capital. This capital only one profit. That is a competitive for the world. This thing that they're staying in every country where they're available in cheap labor and raw materials. That's the thing. The question is industrializations and questions development of most is the democratization. Reach of capital. When capital is becoming economy back, then capital is becoming imperialist, so that institution become and gradually.
On the recent developments in Uttar Pradesh, when government has suspended several labor laws, when you have severe crisis of labor in the state across the country, there's one state, India, has suspended several laws, labor laws in the state. So how do we understand this politics of?
No, that is suspend the labor laws, meaning no right of the labor first, no security of the labor. Question of security and nothing else too about the labor first. In question of the directive principles of the constitution, how they enforce the directive principles? What is the intervention of the court? In my paper, that is the role of the Supreme Court to enforce the directive principles. Supreme Court is not performing their roles. They are not giving the stricture. They are not giving the direction to enforce the directive principles. That is the question. And it is not only in Uttar Pradesh, and so many states also going to replace their labor laws, and so many amendments are coming by which the laborers are losing their rights also. It cannot be. It is sometimes they are called the federal structure in question of deprive the central laws, and also they are centralized their all the power. It is a very, it is not contradiction. It is a completely a game of the capital. They are playing the role, they are interpreting all the things in the behest of federalism, in the behest of unitary centralization, directive principles, fundamental right. Because in question of Uttar Pradesh, that should be challenged properly. Even so many cases are pending in Supreme Court. Supreme Court not is ready to giving the hearing also.
So is it that the entire pandemic has also affected the judiciary system, where judiciary is getting a space to escape from hearing the very contentious issues of the citizens, like labor, the recent arrest of youths in Delhi and other places where they were involved against the forced implementation of NRC, etc.
Oh, yes, I know it.
So how does youth of the country enter into the discourse when the state and then judiciary is not available to listen their voices? What could be the alternate in your understanding?
Now in question, the first question is that the state becomes a, I think, I'm not using the more word, that is now become an authoritarian state. But I can say it is also in question of towards fascism. But the institutions of the states, obviously the judiciary is the part of the state, so that though judiciary, we are thinking the judiciary is the independence of the judiciary. It is a lofty idea, but sometimes is the part of the state. But question is the basic question: when the executives they are using black laws, there is illegal detentions. Even the executive also arresting a huge number of people, those who are a democratic political movement. NRC movement is the movement for democratization, is the movement for sustain the democracy. NRC movement is nothing but it is the sustain the democracy. That is the people's movement, mass action. Mass has taken action to sustain the judiciary, to sustain the democracy. But it's question of judiciary when the democracy is in peril and people are in road to save the democracy, save the institution. But it's the unfortunate, undesirable role from the judiciary. They are not protecting the interest of the people who are fighting for the democracy. Not only that, now a large number of activists they are being put in jail, so that there is no provision at this moment to getting the bail, obtain the bail, move the bail in this period. Actually, yesterday I had talked with our important civil liberties activist in India. I talked in details about it. But at this moment in Delhi, particularly, we are not getting access. The details of who are in the custody, how we will move before the court. So that at this, it is the very painful who are the activists of civil liberties, democratic rights. We are not getting access to go before the court for their release and everything. They are using the situation that should not be done. A democratic state should not be do this. Yes, please.
Yeah, I mean, sir, there's one futuristic question. Life will not be normal because of coronavirus in next several months.
Yes.
But whenever
Yes.
lockdown is over,
Yes.
do you see the normalcy of people's life returning in the context of getting access to governance, getting access to judiciary, getting the rights of getting bail, for example? Several people have, as you mentioned, got detained, and people don't know who is where. what is happening?
No, so far my understanding in last few years, actually I am concerned with very much. The People's Union of Civil Liberties. It is a very credential organization. It is founded by the Profession Arun, and I also in associated Citizens for Democracy. But it is our experience, not only experience in our movement, in the judiciary, in the being a lawyer, in the our fellow members who are in practicing in different courts. But it is unfortunate, I can say, that in present judicial in judicial system, we are not find a good number of lawyers who are ready to fight to save the democracy, to shape the human rights, to shape the civil liberties. They are not coming forward. They are not coming forward. It is also good opportunity for our oppositions, good opportunity for the authoritarian and fascist forces also. Even it is my assumption, not only assumption, I am receiving it that the situation after if the lockdown is over, situation will not become normal at all, because in this lockdown period, the opposition forces, that is, who are against the democracy, who are against the democratization, these forces are very much active. They are in the executive. They are operating the executive. They are operating the state. They are the operator of the state. They have created such a situation. In lockdown time, people are very much distancing. It is lockdown become the, actually it should be meaning the physical distancing, but they have called social distancing. In Indian society, social distancing is thousands years. Social distancing. Social distancing means question of religion, question of caste, question of class. They are introducing again the social distancing. They are talking about the social distancing, but they are not talking the physical distancing. And they are very much successful to implement their agenda in lockdown period. They very much, I think, they are very much success. Social distancing. Social distancing means the distancing of the different groups, distancing of the different forces, not individual, distancing of the different forces. They are doing their own agenda. I am not seeing any light. If a lockdown is over, the situation will be normal. I don't hope for that. Yes, please.
Yeah, that's true, sir. That's true. And then you have brought to the, end of the meeting, you brought to a very interesting note that situation or life will not be normal.
Yes, yes. No.
Were discussing during NRC. Yeah.
Yes.
And perhaps this will be again a new normal where we have to learn and
is any other
live.
question?
No, actually the time is getting over.
Okay,
so
fine.
We'll have to wind up.
I am grateful to the organizer, you also, and I think we'll meet again on different issue. I am very much grateful.
I'm on behalf of Democracy Dialogue, we are thankful to you for sparing more than an hour here. And I also thank Dr. Subhankar Basu, who could connect me with you for an important issue like this in this period of time. We definitely look forward for a deeper association with your understanding and future discussions over Zoom or whatever medium, but we'll keep in touch and have you as one of our advisors who would be guiding us, all the youth in fact. Thank you so much, Mr. Arun Kumar sir, Arun Maji sir, and I thank everyone who have joined the meeting today. Everyone, thank you so much. Stay home, stay safe, and definitely we take note. The point what you said, the social distancing is not the right what Kancha Ilaiah wrote in an article that we should use it disease distancing, not social
Right, right,
distancing.
right,
Social
right.
distancing is still a disease in India. So definitely we'll take back this note that will make disease distancing, not social distancing. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Bye-bye.